I just need one night, she begged, her voice breaking in a way that made time hesitate, and before you even know who she is or why she's asking, you're already holding your breath, because you've been there too, at the edge of something, hoping one small mercy could change everything. Before we go any further, if stories that touch the heart, heal old wounds, and remind you that hope can arrive when you least expect it means something to you, take a second to like this video and subscribe to the channel. It helps these stories reach people who might need them tonight, maybe someone just like her. Her name was Mara, and she hadn't planned to beg. She'd planned to be strong, to stand straight, to ask politely, to accept whatever answer came her way. But plans fall apart when life presses too hard, and life had been pressing on Mara for a long time. She stood in the doorway of a quiet roadside motel office, rain dripping from her hair, shoes soaked through, hands clenched so tightly her nails bit into her palms. The neon sign outside flickered like it might give up at any moment, and in that flicker was the story of her life lately, almost gone, but stubbornly still there. The man behind the counter looked up from a ledger that seemed older than both of them. His name was Daniel, though she didn't know that yet. He had the kind of face that suggested he'd learned to be careful with emotions, not cold, just measured. He'd seen too many people come through that door with stories heavy enough to break a weaker man. He paused when he saw her, not because she was beautiful, though she was in a tired, human way, but because desperation has a sound, and he heard it in her breathing before she even spoke. I just need one night, she said again, softer now, almost apologetic. I can clean rooms tomorrow. I can help at the desk. I don't have much, but I'll work. I promise. Her eyes flicked toward the door, then back to him, as if whatever chased her might burst through at any second. She didn't mention the eviction notice folded in her pocket, or the job she'd lost when her mother got sick, or the hospital bills that had eaten every bit of savings she'd ever had. She didn't talk about the car that had finally died 2 miles down the road, or the phone with a cracked screen and no service. All of that was there, though, hanging between them like an unspoken confession. Daniel leaned back slightly, fingers resting on the counter. He'd heard versions of this before, and experience told him to be cautious. Kindness, when given without boundaries, can turn into regret. But something in her eyes stopped him from delivering the practiced response he'd used so many times. It wasn't just fear. It was dignity, battered but not broken. It was someone asking not for a handout, but for a chance to breathe. He paused, and in that pause Mara's heart pounded so loudly she was sure he could hear it. She counted the seconds, each one stretching longer than the last. This was the moment that would decide whether she slept under a roof or in the backseat of a dead car, whether she could face tomorrow with a sliver of strength or collapse under the weight of one more no. You can have more, Daniel finally said. She blinked. I'm sorry, you can have more than one night, he repeated. There's an empty room in the back. It's not fancy, but it's clean. You can stay a while. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Mara's knees nearly gave out. Relief hit her so fast it hurt, like warm water on frozen skin. Tears spilled before she could stop them, and she covered her face, embarrassed, overwhelmed. Thank you, she whispered, the words too small for what she felt. You don't know what this means. Daniel slid a key across the counter. Maybe I do, he said. Quietly. That first night, Mara slept like someone who hadn't slept in weeks. The room smelled faintly of detergent and old wood, and the mattress sagged in the middle, but to her it felt like safety. Rain tapped gently against the window, no longer a threat but a lullaby. For the first time in a long while, she allowed herself to imagine a tomorrow that wasn't just about surviving the next hour. The days that followed settled into an unexpected rhythm. Mara cleaned rooms with a kind of gratitude that showed in every careful fold of a towel, every wiped surface. She worked the desk when Daniel stepped out, learning the names of the few regulars and the stories they carried with them. There was Mrs. Klein, who stayed one weekend a month to visit her husband's grave. There was Theo, a trucker who brought her black coffee and called everyone, kid. This little motel, forgotten by most, was a crossroads for people in between lives, and somehow Mara fit right in. Daniel watched her from a distance at first. He noticed how she hummed softly while she worked, how she listened more than she talked, how she treated each guest like they mattered. It reminded him of someone he used to be, before loss had taught him to keep his heart guarded. Years ago, he'd had a family, a different life, and a belief that things always worked out if you were good enough. Life had corrected him harshly, and this motel was what remained, a place to hide, to exist quietly. One evening, after a long day, they sat on plastic chairs outside the office, watching the sun dip behind the trees. The air smelled like wet pavement and pine. Mara held a cup of tea, warming her hands. "Why did you help me?" she asked suddenly, not looking at him. Daniel took a moment. "Because someone once helped me when they didn't have to," he said. "And because you reminded me of that." She nodded, accepting the answer without prying. That was one of the things he came to admire about her. She didn't demand explanations for kindness, she honored it. But life doesn't let peace last without testing it. One afternoon, a man showed up asking for Mara by name. He had a sharp smile and restless eyes, the kind that made your skin crawl. Daniel felt something tighten in his chest as he watched Mara stiffen the moment she saw him. "I told you I'd find you," the man said, voice low. "You can't just disappear." Daniel stepped forward before Mara could respond. "She's busy," he said evenly. "You'll need to leave." The man scoffed but eventually did, throwing a look over his shoulder that promised trouble. When he was gone, Mara sank into a chair, shaking. She told Daniel everything then, about the relationship she'd fled, the control masked as concern, the anger that followed her independence. She'd thought distance would be enough. She'd been wrong. Fear returned like a familiar enemy, whispering that she never should have believed in safety, that it was only a matter of time before everything fell apart again. Daniel listened, really listened, and when she finished, he said, "You don't have to face this alone." True to his word, he helped her file a report, connected her with resources in town, stood between her and the world when she needed it. It wasn't dramatic or loud. It was steady, and that steadiness began to heal something in both of them. Months passed. The motel didn't change much, but Mara did. She saved money, took online classes at night, laughed more freely. Daniel found himself smiling more, letting himself care again. They didn't rush anything, didn't name what was growing between them. It was enough to know that in this unlikely place, they'd both found room to breathe. One night, much like the first, rain fell softly, and Mara stood in the office doorway again. This time, she wasn't desperate. She was grateful. "I was thinking," she said, "about that night I asked for one night." Daniel smiled gently. "I remember. You gave me more," she said. "You gave me a chance." He shook his head. "You gave that to yourself. I just opened the door." The truth was, they'd both done that for each other. In a world that often teaches us to harden our hearts, they'd chosen something braver. The motel became a symbol not of what they'd lost, but of what they'd rebuilt. And maybe that's the message that stays with you after this story ends, that sometimes all someone can ask for is one night, one moment, one small kindness. But when we choose to pause instead of turn away, when we choose compassion over caution, we might just give them more. More time, more hope, more life. If this story touched you, if it reminded you that kindness still matters, don't forget to like and subscribe, and share it with someone who might need to hear that sometimes, one night can change everything.